Hello, good morning everyone. Today we will discuss important topic uh,
That sounds
how
great.
how to learn from failures. We will ask questions Chat GPT and Chat GPT will give us expert answers. So first question will be, what does failure mean to you personally?
That's a really good question to start with. For me, learning from failure means recognizing that every setback is a chance to grow. It's about taking a step back, understanding what went wrong, and using that insight to adapt and improve next time. It's not always easy, but it's incredibly powerful.
Can failure ever be considered a success? How?
Absolutely, yes. In fact, some of the greatest successes in history were born out of failure. When we take failure as a teacher, it gives us the chance to adjust our approach, refine our skills, and ultimately reach a bigger goal that we might not have achieved otherwise.
Why do people fear failure so much?
Yeah, that's really common. A lot of it comes from how we're socialized. Failure can feel like a threat to our self worth or identity. Plus, we often fear judgment from others. But when we reframe it, seeing failure as a step in the process, we can take the fear out of it and focus on growth.
Do you think society views failure negatively or positively?
I think it's a bit of a mix, but traditionally, society has leaned towards seeing failure as a negative, something to be avoided or hidden. However, I do think that's slowly shifting, especially as more people talk openly about their setbacks and share how they've grown. So there's definitely a positive trend towards seeing failure as a part of the journey.
Can you tell me
Of
a failure, small failure, that taught us something valuable?
Absolutely. Even a small failure can be a gold mine of insight. When something doesn't go as planned, it often reveals blind spots, new perspectives, or habits we need to change. Those small moments teach us resilience, better strategies, and often prevent bigger failures down the line.
Okay. What are the most common causes of failure in life or career?
Yeah, great question. Some of the most common causes are things like a lack of preparation, setting unrealistic expectations, fear of taking risks, poor timing, or even just not being adaptable to change. Sometimes external circumstances play a role too, things like the economy or sudden life events, but usually it's a mix of internal and external factors.
Okay. Is failure always within our control? Why or why not?
That's a really nuanced point. I'd say no, failure isn't always within our control. Sometimes external factors like the economy, other people's actions, or just sheer bad luck play a big role. But even when things are outside our control, how we respond, our mindset, our choices still matters a lot.
How do emotions like fear, shame, or embarrassment affect our response to failure?
Definitely. Those emotions can really hold us back. Fear might stop us from trying again. Shame might make us avoid sharing or asking for help. And embarrassment can just keep us stuck. But if we acknowledge those feelings, we can work through them and make them less powerful so we can take action despite them.
What is the difference between failure and a mistake?
That's a great distinction. A mistake is usually a single incorrect action or decision, something that might be fixed quickly. Failure, on the other hand, is often a bigger outcome. It's when a goal or expectation isn't met. So a mistake can lead to failure, but failure is the larger result of a series of actions or circumstances.
Can repeated failures lead to success? Give example.
Absolutely. A great example is Thomas Edison. He famously failed thousands of times before inventing the light bulb. Each failure taught him something new, and he kept refining his approach until he succeeded. Another example is J.K. Rowling, who faced numerous rejections before Harry Potter became a global success. So, repeated failures often are just stepping stones toward eventual success.
What is a growth mindset and
A
how does it help in dealing with failures?
Yeah, exactly. A growth mindset is the belief that our abilities and intelligence can be developed through effort and learning. And that's really powerful when facing failure because instead of seeing setbacks as permanent, you see them as opportunities to grow, adapt, and improve. So even if something goes wrong, you believe you can get better over time.
How can we train ourselves to see failure as an opportunity?
That's a great question. One way is to reframe failure as data. So instead of thinking, I'm a failure, you ask, what can this teach me? Another is to celebrate small efforts and progress rather than just outcomes. And finally, surrounding yourself with supportive people who see failure as a step, not a stop, really helps a lot.
Do successful people fail more than others? Why?
Yeah, that's really interesting. Often successful people take more risks, which naturally exposes them to more failure. They also tend to push boundaries, experiment, and step out of their comfort zones more, which increases both the chance of failure and the chance of eventual breakthroughs. So, in a way, failure is just part of their process.
How does attitude determine the outcome after failure?
Attitude is huge because it shapes how we respond. If we stay positive and see failure as a temporary setback, we're more likely to bounce back, learn, and keep going. But if we adopt a defeatist attitude, thinking I'll never succeed, it becomes a self fulfilling prophecy. So our mindset really directs the trajectory after a failure.
What role does self confidence play after experiencing failure?
Self confidence is really crucial because after a failure, it's easy to doubt ourselves. But if we trust that we have the ability to grow, we stay motivated to try again. Self confidence helps us take risks, learn from mistakes, and keep a long term perspective, which is key to eventually succeeding.
Okay, what lessons can failure teach that success cannot?
Yeah, that's a really valuable point. Failure teaches us humility and resilience. It shows us where our weaknesses are and it gives us a chance to experiment, adapt, and build grit. Success, on the other hand, can feel validating, but it often doesn't push us to examine those deeper lessons. So, failure is a real catalyst for personal growth.
Yeah. So failure teaches us some uh,
Exactly.
lessons like be more consistent, ability. Okay, very nice. Okay,
Yeah, exactly. Failure really pushes us to build consistency, to reevaluate our approach, and to stay patient. It reminds us that progress isn't always linear, but with persistence, we get stronger and more capable each time.
okay. How can we reflect effectively after a failure?
Yeah, reflecting effectively means giving yourself some space to really analyze what happened. So, asking yourself what exactly went wrong, it was in my control, what could I do differently next time? Writing down these insights or discussing them with a mentor also helps keep the lessons fresh so you can apply them going forward.
Okay. So we should give some space to
Of
anybody who fail so that he can analyze himself. Right.
Right, exactly. Giving yourself that mental space means you can pause, gain perspective, and really understand not just what went wrong, but how you can apply those lessons in the future. So, reflection is really about creating that space to grow.
Why is it important to analyze failure instead of ignoring it?
It's really important because if we just ignore failure, we miss out on the lessons it offers. By analyzing it, we uncover patterns, identify mistakes, and see what adjustments we need to make. That way, each failure becomes a stepping stone, not a roadblock.
How can failure improve decision-making skills?
Yeah, that's a great connection. When we analyze failure, we see where we went off track, and that sharpens our ability to make better decisions next time. We become more attuned to risks, better at spotting opportunities, and ultimately, we choose more effective paths forward.
And what strategies help turn failure into a learning experience?
Yeah, a few key strategies can really help. First, set aside a specific time to reflect. Don't rush it. Second, get curious. Ask yourself what happened, why, and what you can adjust. Third, take small, concrete steps toward improvement and keep a journal or log of your progress. That way, each failure is a guide, not a no block.
Can you name a few famous persons who turned failure into success?
Yeah, absolutely. A classic example is J.K. Rowling. She faced countless rejections before Harry Potter was published. Another is Michael Jordan. He was cut from his high school basketball team, but used that failure as fuel to work harder. And then there's Oprah Winfrey. She faced setbacks early in her career, but turned them into a transformative success. So these examples really show how failure can be a powerful springboard.
What can we learn from them?
I think one of the biggest lessons is persistence. They all kept going despite rejection or failure, and they didn't let one setback define them. We also learned that failure doesn't mean permanent defeat, it's just a step in the process, and with adaptation and courage, we can find new solutions.
How do entrepreneurs handle failure differently from others?
That's a great question. Entrepreneurs often view failure as a temporary detour, not a dead end. They separate themselves from their setbacks by staying focused on the bigger vision. They also build a support network like mentors or peers who can help them reframe failure as a learning tool rather than a final judgment.
Okay. So entrepreneurs learn they maintain a group of friends. They can consistency very important. So
Yeah, that's really crucial. By staying connected to a supportive group of peers, they get different perspectives, encouragement, and even practical advice. That sense of community helps them stay resilient, bounce back faster, and keep innovating even after a big setback.
good. What can students learn from academic failure?
Students can learn so much from academic failure. It teaches them resilience, time management, and how to seek help when needed. They also learn to break down their goals, adjust their strategies, and recognize that a single setback doesn't define their potential.
How can failure improve leadership skills?
Absolutely. When leaders face failure, it humbles them and it teaches them empathy, adaptability, and strategic thinking. They learn how to take responsibility, guide their teams through tough times, and model resilience. So, failure often makes them stronger, more grounded leaders.
How does failure contribute to innovation and creativity?
Yeah, failure is actually a huge driver of innovation. When something doesn't work, it forces us to rethink, experiment, and try new approaches we might not have considered. So, failure pushes us out of old patterns, sparks fresh ideas, and often leads us to creative breakthroughs we wouldn't have reached otherwise.
Hmm. What are the practical steps to recover
Yeah,
after
so
a
practical.
major setback?
Exactly. After a setback, it really helps to take a moment to regroup, set small, achievable goals, and make a clear action plan. It's also important to lean on that support network, whether it's friends, mentors, or peers, to keep you motivated and guide you forward.
Very important that we should have some peer group.
Absolutely. Having a support system is vital, whether it's a mentor, friends, or a coach. Those people help us stay grounded, offer perspective, and remind us that setbacks are just temporary. So having that safety net really helps us bounce back.
How important is support from family or friends during painful? Okay.
Yeah, that's really key. When we have a growth mindset, we realize that one failure or one mistake doesn't define us. Instead of staying stuck, we see each setback as a chance to adapt, refine, and ultimately keep moving forward. So it stops failure from becoming a permanent barrier.
How can we stay motivated after failing multiple times?
Staying motivated after repeated failures really relies on keeping a bigger purpose in mind. Celebrate small wins, break goals into manageable steps, and remind yourself why you started. Also, give yourself permission to rest and recharge. Sometimes a little pause helps you come back even stronger.
What habits can help us bounce back strong?
Yeah, a few habits can really help. For example, setting a daily routine keeps you anchored, keeping a gratitude journal reminds you of progress, and regularly reviewing your goals helps keep you on track. Also, things like practicing mindfulness or staying physically active can boost your resilience so you can bounce back more easily.
How can setting realistic goals reduce the impact of fear?
Yeah, that's a big one. When we set realistic goals, we reduce the chance of feeling overwhelmed or discouraged. So break big goals into smaller, achievable steps, set timelines you can actually stick to, and track your progress. When you achieve each milestone, it keeps you motivated and moving forward.
Is it possible to succeed without ever feeling by?
Yeah, that's a really tough one. Most people who succeed have faced failure along the way. Failure forces us to grow, adapt, and build resilience. So even if it feels discouraging, it's often a necessary part of the journey towards success.
I we see that it is a part of the game. Sometimes failure occurs, sometimes success occurs.
Exactly. And when we accept that both failure and success are just part of the process, we stop fearing failure so much. Instead, we see it as a natural step that brings us closer to where we want to be.
And what will you say to someone who just failed and feels hopeless?
I would say take a deep breath and remember that this moment doesn't define you. Everyone faces setbacks and it's okay to feel down, but reach out for support, reflect on what you can learn, and know that this failure is just a step, not the end. You still have so much potential ahead of you.
So we should say that it is not the end of the story, it is part of the game, and we can continue our try, our efforts. Then every
Exactly. This is just one chapter in your journey, not the whole story. Keep going, stay curious, and let this setback be a stepping stone. Your effort and perseverance will get you where you want to go.
how can failure shape a person's character?
Yeah, that's a great focus. After a failure, we can intentionally set new specific habits like daily reflection, a learning routine, or small daily goals. Over time, these habits help us stay on track, keep us moving forward, and prevent that single setback from stopping us.
And what is your biggest takeaway lesson about failure?
I think my biggest takeaway is that failure isn't a sign to quit, it's a signal to pivot. Every time I've failed, it's been a chance to rethink, adjust my approach, and come back stronger. So I've learned that failure is just part of progress.
And how can we create a culture where failure is accepted as part of growth?
Yeah, that's a really important shift. It helps to start by normalizing failure. Talk openly about it, share stories, and celebrate the lessons learned. Encourage a culture of curiosity, asking, what can we take from this? So that failure is seen as a natural, valuable part of innovation and growth.
Right? So, end of the discussion, that I can say that failure is a part of the game. Most successful people has have more failures, and so there is just we have to accept failure as a part, and we have to learn it and to continue our efforts. And
Yes, exactly. By embracing failure as a natural step, we give ourselves permission to grow. Each failure is a lesson, and as long as we reflect, adapt, and keep trying, those setbacks become the foundation for long term success.
thank you very much. We had a wonderful talk. This talk had a great lessons and understanding of careers. Thank you very much.
You're so